You ready, Bill?
Let me know if you need a hand up.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to debate night. We're very happy to see you all here in the room. My name is Rinus Oosthoek. I'm the Executive Director of the Salem Chamber of Commerce and Civics. And as you've heard in previous debates, if you've been here before, we are very proud as a chamber to be a chamber and civics chamber since 1912 when we started. Because that's when the Retail Association and the Civics Association joined to form this now Salem Chamber of Commerce and Civics. So I want to thank you all for coming. Tonight's debate will be moderated by Dave Olson. Most of you are familiar with David. He's the former chief editor of the Salem News, now works for Wayside Trailer. So we're very happy to have Dave back as an independent moderator of the debate. We want to thank the League of Women Voters, who is helping us with the organization and the timekeeping of tonight's debate. And if I can point out for both candidates, the lovely ladies in front, and I know I'm not supposed to say ladies anymore, but the lovely women in front. The lovely women. So I make the first mistake. We're all good. We'll keep you on time. Please take a note when the 30-second sign goes up and when the time goes up. I want to welcome the supporters of all the candidates, and I want to welcome the Salem Chamber membership. And I want to welcome all the residents and voters in attendance tonight. We're looking forward to a positive and informative exchange of ideas and viewpoints for the city of Salem, because we're all looking to the future, and we hope that you will listen well and that you will share the knowledge that you gain from this debate with your neighbors, your friends, your family, and essentially get people out to vote, because that's what it's all about. The Chamber has collected questions from its membership. We are collecting questions from the room as well, and a little later on, I'll walk through the room, and if you want to ask a question, I'll lend you a card and the pens, and I'll collect them and give them to the moderator again. The moderator is the only one who knows what questions will be asked and which questions will be selected. The chamber has nothing to do with it. The candidates have nothing to do with it. It's just the moderator. So that's how we guarantee that it's a fair debate and that everybody gets a shot at presenting himself the best way possible. I do want to welcome the politicians in the room, and I hope you signed in, because in the room is Patty Morcillo. Just wave. Yep, welcome, Patty. Kristen Pangello from the school committee, welcome. Alice Merkel, welcome, Alice. Konrad Prosnowski, welcome, Councillor. Senator Joan Lovely is in the house. Thank you, Senator. And I have Councillor Andy Varela in the house in the back. So welcome all, and thank you for being here. The next step for me is really to get out of the way, because I am pretty much done once I tell you who sponsored the debate, because we are a Chamber of Commerce and we want to make sure that people who support us also get the recognition they deserve. And this debate is sponsored by Eastern Bank, Salem 5, by Salem State University, Salem Hospital, and the Salem Witch Museum. And I want to thank them all for doing this. So thank you. The moderator is going to introduce the candidates. We're beginning with a 2-minute opening statement, and we did a little coin toss, and the candidate who chose to open first is also the candidate who will do the first closing statement, because that makes it fair, and the moderator will introduce the candidates. I want to make sure everybody be respectful. Applause, please, only once we're done with the debate, once when I introduce the moderator, and once when we have the candidates being introduced. We want you to hold your applause, because we want to also thank Salem Access in the room here for streaming the debate live, for putting it on the camera, and make sure that the viewers at home will have as good an experience as you will have in this room. And with that, please welcome the moderator, Dave Olson.
Thank you. I like when Rinus has to ask for applause when I show up, but I'll take it. And one other note, when you're writing questions, please make sure they're answerable by both candidates, so we can make sure that everybody gets a chance to answer. And as Rinus said, we're going to start with opening statements, and we will start with 2 minutes from Neil Harrington. Neil.
Good evening. I want to start by thanking the Salem Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for organizing this event and for Salem Access TV for televising it. Salem voters have an important decision to make in choosing the person best qualified to fill the leadership vacuum created by former Mayor Driscoll's departure. Residents are understandably concerned about our city's future stability and direction, and they want our next mayor to have strong leadership skills and proven executive experience to lead Salem through this important transition. I know firsthand that being mayor is a challenging job. I have been a municipal chief executive for almost 3 decades, 8 years previously as mayor of Salem, and nearly 20 years as the current town manager in Salisbury. All the challenges that come with these positions have been part of my daily job description for many years. Salem is a great city with significant potential. Much progress has been made in certain areas over the years, yet we still face serious challenges, such as how to get a better handle on our traffic problems, how to approach our affordable housing needs, how to responsibly manage growth and new development, how to improve our schools, how to better manage tourism, and how to continue to provide basic services to residents while keeping an eye on taxes. I believe we can meet these challenges, but Salem is a complex city to manage, and it will require strong leadership skills and proven experience to guide the city forward. I offer all residents of Salem a solid track record of success in 2 communities that has prepared me to lead, to innovate, to respond, repair, and provide direction and govern with fairness, inclusion, and optimism. I welcome the opportunity to put my experience to work for Salem again and to move our city forward in a positive direction that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Dominic Mangala.
So thank you to the organizers of tonight's debate. I also want to thank everyone who's been engaged in our campaign. I'm really encouraged by the level of energy and excitement by so many who believe that our future is as bright as our past. I believe that Salem's best days are ahead of us. I believe that not only for the sake of my own 2 daughters, but for every child and every family in Salem, for every older adult who wants to age in place here in the community that they love, for every small business owner who wants to see our city thrive, and for every worker who makes that possible. Just like them, just like all of you, I'm an optimist about Salem. I believe Salem can move forward, not backward. I believe we can ensure every child has great schools and that we honor and respect the work of our teachers. We can prepare thoughtfully for the impacts of the climate crisis while also reducing our own contributions to it. We can right-size our housing supply to meet the needs of all Salem residents and do more to make our community more affordable for people that live here. We can create a vibrant local economy that nurtures entrepreneurship and respects our workers. We can have great neighborhoods and parks and public spaces, and we can center equity and justice in everything we do, and that being a welcoming city makes us a stronger city, not a poorer one. That's the Salem I believe in. That's the Salem that's ahead of us. The Salem that so many of us who have been present and working for our community, that we've been building together. The Salem of today, where professionalism and not politics drives our actions, where we honor our history, but also value innovation and progress. Salem is that special place because we made it that way. And I'm running for mayor to ensure that important work continues. Thank you.
Okay, so Dominic, we start with you for our first question. And since this is Salem Chamber, we're going to start with a business question. After dealing with the COVID pandemic, inflation, workforce issues, and the cost of doing business skyrocketing, how do you think Salem's businesses are doing? What can your administration do to help Salem businesses be competitive and succeed? 90 seconds.
Start with me? Okay. So Salem does have a robust and thriving small business community, something that a lot of the people in this room have been working so hard to cultivate and support over these years. The Chamber of Commerce, Salem Main Streets, the Creative Collective, Destination Salem, so many other community partners. And we're right now enjoying some of the lowest storefront vacancy rates in downtown since Salem Main Street started tracking that metric. We're seeing new businesses like the Daily Table and Annie's Asian Market and Silly Bunny and so many others that serve our visitors and our residents alike. I think that Salem can do more to nurture the growth of our small business sector and strengthen our existing small businesses. And I think that starts with something that grew out of the COVID pandemic, which was the Economic Recovery Task Force. I think that we can make that that task force permanent as an economic coordinating council. It was a really fantastic opportunity for communication, for sharing information, for leveraging opportunities, and lifting each other up during that crisis. And that's something that I would like to see persist. I would also prioritize connecting our small business community with longstanding funding opportunities, training and workforce support programs, resources that are offered by the city that are often undersubscribed, but also programs that are offered through the Commonwealth, our nonprofit partners, and other organizations. And lastly, I just add, I think that it's really important that we push forward on supporting our BIPOC entrepreneurs and small businesses. Salem's taken a lot of positive steps in that direction over the last few years, but I think there's a lot more work to be done. Leveraging our procurement power as a city, modeling things like our incubator program at Artists Row as a way to support small businesses owned by Black and Indigenous people of color.
Thank you. Neil, would you like me to read the question again?
Sure. So first, I'd like to start by acknowledging that the Driscoll administration did a remarkably good job in guiding the local business community through the throes of COVID-19. I can't think of another community in the state that handled that situation well in terms of its relationship with local businesses, many of whom, if it had not been for that support, might not be here today. But I think now that we've passed the worst of COVID-19, the relationship between the city and the business community needs to be stronger. And I think it starts with communication. It starts with understanding the needs of local businesses, particularly local businesses, some of whom are doing well and some of whom are only doing well at some times of the year, some of whom have difficulty dealing with the throngs of tourists that come at certain times of the year, and it's difficult for those businesses who are here year-round to thrive in that environment when the people that are coming are not coming for them, they're coming for the Halloween-related events. So I think the strategy that is put in place to deal with sustaining local businesses year-round that are here serving the residents year-round is a plus. I also think we should focus on, and the administration needs to work on establishing or helping to establish local businesses that service the needs of the people that live downtown. A lot of the folks who live downtown, and there are more of them now, at least in my experience that I've spoken to, feel that there's some of the basic things that they need, basic supplies and things that they would need on an everyday basis. They don't have downtown, so we need to work on that.
Thank you. Okay. Neil, you're first for this question. Low and middle income households are increasingly squeezed out of Salem's housing market, and the discussion about the urgent need for housing and the effects development can have on parking, traffic, and infrastructure are ongoing. How do you look at new development, and what type and size of housing units do you think are needed most, and in what areas of the city?
So people are being squeezed out of housing in every community, not just Salem. So this is a statewide problem, which I think most people recognize. The estimates are that we need roughly 200,000 units of additional housing. And so I believe the state needs to come up with a strategy that each community can work with and adapt to fit its own particular needs. Salem is 8 square miles, and we do have an affordable housing problem here, but the answer to the problem is not to build an endless supply of new housing. I think it takes more than just building new housing to attack this problem thoughtfully. I think the city needs to adopt programs such as rental assistance, first-time homebuyer programs, which is a program that, for example, I introduced when I was mayor several years ago, and other types of strategies that go beyond build. There's an issue in this community that's very serious and very real about overdevelopment, and I think we need to balance the need for affordable housing, which is real, with the physical constraints and the infrastructure constraints, since we are an older community, that an endless supply of new housing will cause. So in Salisbury, for example, we adopted an inclusionary housing ordinance, which Salem does not have. I think we should adopt one. If I'm mayor, that will be one of my highest priorities, so that we can guarantee that new housing that is built includes a certain percentage of those units reserved for low and moderate income people. So there are strategic ways to deal with this issue that I don't think are being addressed. And if I'm mayor, I intend to put those strategies to work.
Thank you. Dominic.
Thanks. I don't think we should punt and say it's the state's responsibility to come up with a strategy. It's a crisis in our community, and I think that we have some responsibility to take action on that. We are, right now in Salem, we have one deed-restricted affordable unit for every 4 low-income families. There were fewer new housing units built in the last decade in Salem than the average decade of the 20th century. The constraint on housing supply is affecting the cost of housing and the cost of rents. In the last decade, the median family income in Salem increased 8%. The median home price increased by almost 50%. Rent almost doubled. So we are not doing enough to keep up with housing supply, and that needs to be an important part of what we are doing locally. We did complete a housing production plan and a housing needs assessment, and that's shaping the work that's underway. But this work takes a long time. A lot of these projects take a long time, and these families are in crisis right now. We need to start looking at our housing challenges not just as a building problem, but a human-centered problem. There are seniors, there are families, there are people in crisis in these homes right now. We need a coordinated human services approach from our city, based in and owned by city government, providing not just rental assistance, but eviction diversion, broadening senior property tax exemption programs like the one I created in the last administration, with more communication about the first-time homebuyer programs and rental assistance, food security and utility assistance options that are currently available that people can take advantage of to keep more money in their pocket. I created the position of the Neighborhood Stability Coordinator, and then I hired the person in that role to start the framework for that work. And as mayor, that would be one of my top priorities starting on day one.
Thank you. Okay, a follow-up question to that, and we start with you again, Dominic. Most of the decisions regarding housing at the local level are being made by public officials who already have adequate housing. How do you propose to bring those who need the housing into the decision-making process?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How do you propose to bring people who need the housing into the decision-making process?
I think that it starts by opening up channels of communication. So a lot of these decisions are being made in places like planning boards and city councils and zoning boards of appeals. And one of the things that happened during COVID was we were forced to take a lot of our meetings online. And Salem was really a leader in the space in using technology to facilitate virtual meetings. And what we saw when that happened was that participation just skyrocketed. We had more people attending meetings on Zoom than could actually physically fit in conference rooms, legally fit in those conference rooms if we had not done that. So from 2016 to 2018, half of all public comment at city council meetings was provided by just 20 people in a city of 45,000. So those types of meetings where we're only allowing people to come to those meetings and participate, but if they can have the flexibility and the time and the transit or the accessibility to get to that meeting in person, that presents an inequity that prevents a lot of people that need to benefit from the housing that we're talking about creating from being able to attend these meetings. So while we look to bring back meetings in person, I think it's really important that we preserve that option for remote participation for people that don't have a car, that have work where they can't get away or childcare needs, or don't have the mobility and accessibility abilities to get to a meeting in person. Those are the people predominantly served by the housing that we need to create in Salem. And having the option for them to be able to participate without having to physically get to City Hall or City Hall Annex is an important step in making sure that their voices can be heard in that process.
Thank you. Neil.
I take a somewhat different view when it comes to public meetings. I think we need to go back largely to in-person public meetings while retaining a Zoom hybrid option for people who cannot physically attend. I have a major concern about having meetings and having decisions made in a vacuum when a lot of people cannot physically be present because all the meetings are on Zoom. They can't see the people that are in the room. They're not in the room with the people making the decisions. The decisions are made behind lawyers' desks and places where board members are sitting apart from the physical presence of the public. And I think I would take the opposite point of view from my opponent in terms of engagement. I think physical, personal engagement is the single best way to learn about what people's problems are, particularly when it comes to housing. And if I am mayor, I intend to go back to in-person meetings with hybrid options for people who may not be able to attend, but there are a lot of people who want to attend meetings and they feel they're being shut out of the process by having only to be able to attend on Zoom.
Thank you. Okay, and we start with you for this one, Neil. Salem is on its way to become an offshore wind port. Can you describe what that might mean for the city and its residents, and what can we expect to happen in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, I don't have my crystal ball, but I know that it's a nascent industry that's just beginning to be developed, and Salem is uniquely positioned to play a critical role in the offshore wind industry. I have met with the folks from Crowley and have had several briefings about what Salem's role is going to be. And because we have a unique port situation, a unique harbor situation, we stand to be a long-time player in this industry. The assembly and transport of wind turbines and other types of materials that will go to make up these offshore wind facilities will be done in Salem and will be transported out to sea from Salem. So it's very, very important that we have a working relationship not only with the Crowley folks, but also the folks at the state who are going to be heavily involved, not only financially, but in a regulatory manner with offshore wind. But it's a great opportunity to create good paying jobs. It's a great opportunity for us to restore our historic connection with our seaport. And it's also an opportunity for us to put together a meaningful community agreement with the people that are running this facility so that the neighborhood does not suffer in any detrimental way, either from the construction that's going on there or from the ongoing traffic and other potential disruptions. So it's very exciting. I'm a great believer in the transition into a clean energy economy, and Salem's going to play a big role in it.
Thank you. Dominic.
Thanks. Yes, the offshore wind terminal project has some remarkable transformational opportunity for us, for our tax base, for good jobs, and for our work to address the climate crisis. It's really where green energy meets the blue economy. On May 8th, there's going to be a rebid of the state solicitation for renewable power. Avangrid had originally been the project partner that was going to lease the space that Crowley was providing to generate the offshore wind power. So there's a lot hinging on that rebid, but whether or not that happens, Crowley and the CEC are moving forward with the project down at the terminal site, the physical project. So as that's moving forward, I think we need to make sure that we're really creating career pathways through our career and technical education program at Salem High School that are mapped onto that. So those opportunities are there for our students as they graduate, whether they want to work in the offshore wind industry or any of the ancillary industries that are going to be sprouting up around this new economy, really. We also need to make sure that we're thoughtful in pushing Crowley, CEC, and Avangrid to make sure that those jobs are tied to the communities that have been historically and disproportionately impacted by the legacy of fossil fuels. And I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Environmental League of Massachusetts. They recognize that I'm ready on day one to keep moving this critical project forward. I've had experience dealing with the CBA process through the Footprint Project, and I think that it's going to be critically important to make sure that we have someone who's ready to go on day one to provide a strong voice for the neighborhood, for the communities that are going to be impacted by this project, but also to keep our eye on the ball that this really is a transformational opportunity for our community.
Thank you. Related question, and it goes to you, Dominic. Salem, like all coastal communities, has to consider climate change and rising sea levels. How should Salem address the climate crisis, and what are the first things your administration will consider? Are there things we should be doing that we are not doing?
Thanks. The climate crisis is, as I've said before, the existential crisis of our time and our children's generation and future generations. We've taken some incredible steps here in Salem. In the last few years, I was proud to be part of the team that helped create the new Department of Sustainability that worked with our partners in Beverly to create a regional climate action plan called Resilient Together. And then we leveraged that plan to create micro plans targeting places like El Punto, and now we're working on a plan around Collins Cove. And those provide us the opportunity to pursue state grants to actually invest in resilient upgrades to seawalls, infrastructure, and other components of our city along the coastline. We are a historic city, we are an environmental justice community, and we are a coastal city. So we are going to feel the impacts of the climate crisis, and we're already starting to feel those impacts. We need to leverage opportunities like the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act, to bring in federal dollars to help invest in things like infrastructure investments, to move critical infrastructure out of flood zones, to make it resilient, and to think about the future of our city. And at the same time, we need to reduce our own contributions to the climate crisis. It started with something like as simple as Power Choice, a program that I was happy to help start with the city. This is our municipal electricity aggregation program, provides electricity supplied entirely from green renewable energy sources to everyone in the city, while also providing a more stable electricity supply rate than national grids. These are all efforts and steps that we've taken through the Sustainability Department, the Planning Department, and they would continue to be priorities for me going forward because this is the existential crisis of our time.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I actually have a lot of experience in this area, having been the town manager in Salisbury for the last 20 years, which, as you know, is the coastal community. Salisbury experiences a significant flooding, not only on the beach that creates erosion, but it also impacts several neighborhoods that have close proximity not only to the beach but to the Merrimack River. So we've been heavily involved in some of the state programs that help to fund resiliency projects through what's called the Municipal Vulnerability Program, MVP program. And those are the types of programs that cities like Salem need to take advantage of, particularly when there are potential developments on or near our floodplains or near our coast. I have particular concern, for example, about the redevelopment of Shetland Park. The plan that's being proposed is grossly out of scale with the neighborhood and is also being proposed to be built in a very environmentally sensitive area. So I think I can put my experience to work in the coastal areas of Salem, not unlike what I have done in Salisbury. I'm also very heavily into green energy. I began and started the municipal aggregation program in Salisbury, which just this past year alone, for our small community of 9,000 people, saved the ratepayers of Salisbury over $1 million in electricity costs. Because we have the rate locked in for 3 years. So Salisbury's a green community. We're on top of all these things, and I have a lot of experience in them, and I know I could hit the ground running in Salem the same way.
Thank you. And this question goes to you first, Neil. What ideas do you have to improve Salem's parking and traffic situation? Would you consider building an additional parking structure in Salem? And if yes, why and where? And if no, why not? So 90 seconds to solve parking in Salem.
Well, I think the traffic situation is much more serious if I had to choose between the two than the parking situation. And I think some of the measures that have been chosen to deal with the traffic situation in Salem are clearly not working. And the strategy of implementing the types of changes such as what was put into place on North Street, for example, and which is also being contemplated in several other streets in the city, is a recipe for disaster. I think what my opponent calls evidence-based planning is a concept that works great in theory but does not work in the real world. It does not work on North Street, it's not going to work on Loring Avenue, it's not going to work on Broad Street, and it's not going to work on Boston Street. And I can tell you that because I have walked up and down North Street. I've talked to the businesses who have lost 72 parking spaces. I've talked to the people in the neighborhoods who can't get out of the side streets because of those little white stanchions sticking up. I've talked to the fire and police departments who have difficulty doing their jobs and being able to respond in a timely fashion because of a very poorly designed solution to a problem that never existed, which was allegedly speeding on North Street. If this is the type of planning that is going to continue to go into trying to solve some of our traffic problems, then I would take completely the opposite point of view. I would start by listening to what the businesses in the neighborhoods and the public safety people say first before I start implementing solutions that don't work.
Thank you. Dominic.
Thanks. So I'll just start by saying, if somebody's using a roadway in Salem, a public way in Salem, in a manner that's legal, the city has a responsibility to make sure they can do that in a way that's safe. And I know my opponent's not a fan of evidence, but I'll just, suggest the roadway is safer. Before the project was done, North Street was averaging 4 crashes a month. After the project was done, it was averaging 0.75 crashes a month. I live in North Salem. I drive on North Street very often. My 12-year-old daughter bikes in North Salem. I would never let her bike on North Street before there were protected bike lanes. My 9-year-old walks to the Bates School. I would never let her walk to the Bates School before there was daylighting at the crosswalk so you could see cars coming at you. I think that, like I said, we have a responsibility to make sure our roads are safe for every user, no matter how they're choosing to get there. And I'll say, back to the original question, which was about traffic conditions and parking. It does start with listening to the findings of our parking study and our experts, our public safety officials, the employees in our small businesses, and also to the residents and neighborhoods impacted by traffic. And that's how we created the neighborhood traffic calming program. We can improve how traffic flows through our community by investing in the smart traffic signal program that we've started so that our traffic signals work in concert better and provide more efficient platooning of traffic. And we also need to think about how we're investing in ways that people can get around without a car if they choose not to. Many people need a car and will always have a car, but if you choose to not drive in Salem, you should be able to get around. Blue Bikes, the Salem Skipper, the long-awaited South Salem Commuter Rail Station, even our Salem Ferry, these are all providing options for people to get to and through Salem without needing to rely on a vehicle if they choose to.
Okay, this is a follow-up question, and this is actually a question from an audience member. What are your specific detailed plans to improve pedestrian safety and encourage safe bicycling?
Thanks. So just to kind of build on what I was talking about before, I think there's a responsibility that the city has to allow people to travel on the street safely. On Easter Sunday, we lost a neighbor trying to cross Jefferson Avenue. And at the vigil for that individual, one of the speakers said, when there's a distracted driver on North Street, there's a bent flex post or a dented fender. When there's a distracted driver on Jefferson Avenue, a car flips over or someone's killed. So I think we have a moral responsibility to make sure that we're striving for 0 crashes and 0 fatalities. And I don't think that's idealistic. I think it's something that we have a responsibility to do. We can do that by investing more in our neighborhood traffic calming program, investing in tactical solutions that work, that are responsive to the needs of the neighborhood. The neighborhood traffic calming program grew out of neighborhood associations at NIAC, Neighborhood Improvement Council, that came forward and said people were speeding through their neighborhoods. We listened to them. We created that kind of program that invested thoughtfully in evidence-based approaches that I know that we don't like evidence, but evidence-based approaches that tried to slow down the traffic so people wouldn't get hit by cars moving too fast so they could pull out of their driveways and have good sight lines. So I would prioritize that program. It's responsive to what residents ask for in their neighborhoods. It is listening to them, and it's been proven to work. And where it doesn't work or something doesn't actually slow the traffic down in a way that is functional, because it is a pilot program before it's a permanent installation, it gives you the flexibility to say, we're going to try something different there instead. So I'll invest in that. And as far as bicycling goes, support the infrastructure, the green building ordinance,
Thank you.
The Blue Bikes program.
Neil.
I did not say that I don't believe in evidence. What I don't believe in is so-called evidence-based planning, in which on an engineer's drawing board it looks good, but in reality it doesn't work. The evidence that I am more concerned about is the real-life evidence that I witnessed last week when an older person who was trying to get out of her car and cross the street to get either a slice of pizza or a roast beef sandwich was afraid for her life, because she told me she was afraid for her life because she couldn't open her car door without opening it into the line of traffic, which is immediately adjacent to where the cars are now parked. That's evidence, and it's not safe, and it doesn't work. And anybody who defends it and thinks otherwise has his or her head in the sand. And I do not want that type of evidence-based planning spread throughout the communities of Salem. When it comes to pedestrian safety, however, I think we have to be real. We're not going to create a world in which there is no human error. We are not going to create a world in which there is never an accident, or where someone is not distracted when they're driving or is not looking at their cell phone when they're crossing the street. We do need to put into place things that work. Bump outs at crosswalks and things like that are very proven to work. Better signaling at intersections. The intersection at Jefferson Avenue signaled. The safety on Jefferson Ave as a whole is in bad shape. But those work, not things that work on paper, things that work in reality.
Thank you. Neil. Haunted Happenings is Salem's success story, and Salem's approach to keeping it that way is to continuously change and improve the event. What would be your administration's approach to Haunted Happenings and Halloween?
I think Haunted Happenings, by and large, is a wonderful event. I think it's great that we are able to tourists from all over the country who want to come in here and have a good time with their families. Concerns about by the administration of Halloween. Most of the management is farmed out to private companies. The city does not take an act in managing the variety of events that happen here. Concerned about the physical deterioration of the Salem Common. Years has been trampled upon by the people that are coming here to not only, but the people who are coming to visit. And so, by and large, as part of the tourist experience, I think Haunted Happenings creates a lot of economic development. It fills the hotels, and we want to be able to showcase can't hide our head in the sand and pretend that there are no negative effects from Haunted Happenings. It's real, it's quality of life in their neighborhoods, whether you live near, whether you're trying to traverse through the city during those 3 or 4 months, which is now what it is, a month. So it's a good thing on the whole, and I see it maintained, but it needs much better control and management, and that starts in the mayor's office.
Go.
Thanks. Yeah, so the management of Haunted Happenings is in-house. Like the great work that Chief Miller does, Kate Fox, Alan Tukowski, Ray, Katie, Dave, everyone at DPW. It is a city-managed operation with lots of private partners, but it's managed in-house. And Salem is a vibrant, happening place that people want to come visit. I think that's better than the alternative, and I don't think Salem should go back to the old practice, which was a few decades ago, pretending that October wasn't happening, put our head in the sand, and maybe everyone resulted in violence. So for October in Salem, we need to amplify the communications that we've started doing to push seasons to visit and to spread it out more, both geographically and calendar-wise, telling people to plan the visits in advance, take public transit, don't drive. We need to push the T to add more trains all month long, not just on Halloween. We can really improve how we manage traffic and parking in October. Expand the free October shuttle lot. It was a program that I was happy to start in the last administration. And also grow our ability to move traffic through variable parking capacity signage and find ways to close streets proactively so people know that it's happening at a specific time and can plan their travel accordingly. That also allows the city to program those spaces and curate the public performances which happen there. And lastly, we have to find ways to export the costs of the visitor economy more onto the visitors. Right now, Salem is starting to spend more on October than we bring in revenue as a city, not the private businesses. And once we get past that point, the taxpayers are funding October, and we don't want that. So I think we need to start planning in advance for that.
Thank you. Our next question is another one from the audience. It goes to Dominic. Salem State students play a vital role here in Salem, contributing to the local economy, working jobs across the city, and volunteering with local nonprofits. What has your campaign done to engage with this population, and what sort of relationship do you see having with Salem State to address issues facing students such as food insecurity?
Sure. So Salem State and the city of Salem are deeply connected, not only because many of our residents are students or alumni or employees of the university, but because it is a hub of learning and culture and athletics. It's a vital partner in our public schools, a key driver of civic engagement. The students at Salem State are a particularly critical part of how our city works. I've been up to Salem State for a campaign event. I'm going up there again soon. I'm proud to have a recent Salem State grad and student government president, Michael Corley, is my deputy campaign manager. There's no doubt that impacts of hosting a university of the size and reputation of Salem State in our community, there are impacts, but especially with the upcoming South Campus project, we have a really robust relationship with the university, both through the city and through the university structure of their neighborhood advisory committee. When I served on the Dean's Advisory Committee of the College of Arts and Sciences, I really remembered powerful conversations about the rigorous learning that happens at Salem State. So that institution, in my view, is an asset. And I think that the relationships that we have as a city with the students, with the faculty, with the university, we can make sure that we're ensuring that we're navigating those to the positive benefit of everybody.
Thank you. Yeah.
I certainly agree that on the whole, the university is a tremendous asset to the city. It provides educational opportunities, not only for our young kids here from Salem, but throughout the North Shore. It's a major employer. It provides cultural benefits and literary benefits and other types of things that major universities do. It's becoming a much more diverse student body, which I think is a wonderful thing. And I think on the whole, it's a plus. Where I have a concern when it comes to the specific question, which has to do with engaging students from Salem State and political campaigns, I think there's a real crisis in this country that doesn't just extend to our local university. The level of engagement by young people in public affairs and political campaigns is at an all-time low. There were in this most recent primary, for example, which had a low turnout even in and of itself, there was only 10% of the college-age kids in this community that voted, and that includes the kids from Salem State. There are 800 registered voters at Salem State, and only 35 of them voted. So there's been a disconnect between younger people in general in our society and the political process and the public engagement process. And I find that disturbing because the next generation of leaders in all walks of life, including public office, is going to come from our young people. So I think that's a major concern.
Thank you. Neil, the creative workforce has been particularly hard hit during the pandemic, highlighting already existing inequities. As mayor, how can you support arts and culture and the creative workforce and generate new and better opportunities?
I think Salem does better than a lot of communities when it comes to what's called the creative economy and nurturing and supporting artists and businesses that relate to artistic endeavors. And I think the fact that we have the Peabody Essex Museum in town, which is the premier cultural institution north of Boston, is a tremendous asset for us. Our economy is changing. We are not, particularly in this post-COVID era, going back to an era where people are going to be largely commuting to offices and jobs and sitting behind desks. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day about the vacancy rate in downtown office buildings is at an all-time high, and it's probably not going to get any better. So the gig economy and the local creative economy are the types of things that are going to diversify the opportunities that people have. And here in Salem, because we have the museum and because we have a local artistic community that's somewhat established, and because we're looking at building new housing, such as the housing that's going to go into the former St. Mary's School, where I attended several years ago on Hawthorne Boulevard, which is going to include artist housing. I think those are wonderful things, and we need to continue to encourage those things and provide support on the city level where we can, such as, for example, micro business loans for businesses with less than 10 employees. Those types of things are going to help spur our creative economy and make it something that we can't even imagine what it's going to be sitting here today.
Thank you. Dominic?
Yeah, I think that Salem has some remarkable assets in our creative economy work. We have partners, both the Creative Collective and also partners that are not part of the Creative Collective who have contributed to the fabric of our small business community, and they have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. A lot of them worked in jobs, second jobs, third jobs that they were no longer able to work at when restaurants shut down and when businesses shut down, and they're still feeling that impact. So I think how we're being intentional about supporting those workers, it goes far beyond just a Peabody Essex Museum. It's really about the people that, as Mary Driscoll used to say, pour your coffee, pour your beer. They can't afford to live in Salem anymore. And I think that, as we become a community that's out of reach, affordability speaking wise, for those people in that workforce, we're pushing them out away from our community and we're losing that workforce. I think that we can leverage partnerships that we have with some remarkable people in our community right now that are advocates for that workforce, and bring them into the fold as we're having conversations. I mentioned the Economic Coordinating Council before, that concept. The Creative Collective was part of the Economic Recovery Task Force, and they should be at the table as part of the process for the Economic Coordinating Council as well. Our economy, there's an economist who said that our grandparents had careers, we have jobs, and our kids are going to have gigs. This is the economy of the future, and we need to make sure that we're tailoring the programs that we have and the kind of investments we're making in things like housing, things like our career and technical education program at the high school, to help those students understand that the arts and the creative workforce is a technical education and an opportunity for a career, not just a gig.
Thank you. Another post-COVID question. During the pandemic, the city has allowed many restaurants to have additional outdoor seating, both on the public walkway and in designated parking spots. What's your vision for this post-pandemic? Dominic.
The outdoor dining was interesting. It started with a parklet pilot that we tried the year before COVID, which some people may remember. Worked in a couple places, didn't work in some others. And it was a great example of how we learned from that, pivoted, and then created a permanent program that actually was of great benefit to the community during COVID. I would love to see it stay. I think that it creates a great ambiance on the streetscape. It provides our businesses with the opportunity to leverage space to generate more revenue. The meals taxes that it will help bring in is great. We I think closed about 2% of our downtown parking spaces to outdoor dining. So it was not a significant impact on our parking capacity. And what we got in return for that, the additional table seating, the additional meals excise, the additional jobs that it created, was far outweighed the loss of a few $1,000s in parking revenues each year. The city council is taking up an outdoor dining policy right now, actually, tomorrow night for the first time. I think it's been thoughtfully created. I would be supportive of it. It does have a license fee component, so it's not providing public space for free. So for going forward in the future, unlike during COVID, restaurants would have to pay a license fee to use the public space for outdoor dining. But I think it's a great model of how you can activate a streetscape, make it attractive, make it vibrant, and support our small businesses in a really innovative way.
Thank you. Neil.
I too support the continuation of outdoor dining and making it permanent in places where it's appropriate. We did the similar thing in Salisbury, and we found particularly in the what they call the beach center area down near the beach, it was a lifesaver for a lot of our local businesses that are largely seasonal up in Salisbury. Here, we're very fortunate. We have a robust year-round, vibrant restaurant scene. And continuing the outdoor dining program is very, very important. It's something I would certainly encourage and support as mayor. I was actually contacted by a couple of restaurant owners during the last couple of months during this campaign, and I was asked whether or not specifically I would be in favor of continuing the outdoor dining and looking at other options to make it more attractive and more viable for businesses. And the answer is yes. I think it's here to stay, and I support it completely.
Thank you. This is another question from the audience. This goes to Neil first. Salem is a welcoming city. It has become a sanctuary for the LGBTQ plus populace, more so than many other communities in Massachusetts. How would you celebrate, respect, honor, and promote this vital characteristic?
So I applaud Kim Driscoll's efforts to make Salem a more welcoming and inclusive and vibrant city. Not only for visitors, but for people from the LGBTQ plus community and a variety of other communities that have felt very welcome in coming here. I'm also very encouraged and strongly support the recent statement that was made by all of our elected officials. And if I were an elected official at that time, I would have made the same statement in response to a recent incident in which there was some LGBTQ kids in town that were being harassed at the local Wendy's. I find that despicable, and I think our police department responded appropriately in apprehending these people, identifying them, and now they will face justice. The statement that I referred to was made by all the members of the school committee, all the city councilors, the mayor, the superintendent of schools, and Congressman Moulton. And if I had been an elected official, I would have supported that statement as well. I think it's very, very important that Salem continue its long history of welcoming people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, no matter how you identify in terms of your sexuality or things like that. And it's a critical component of our community. It's something that I strongly believe in. As a public official, I have the legal and moral obligation to uphold the rights of all citizens, and if I'm elected, I will do that.
Thank you. Dominic.
Thanks. Last week I had the opportunity to attend the Red Party, which is an annual benefit for NAGLI, and it was truly if you've not been, an unbelievably enjoyable, fun, joyous night, and I encourage you to get a ticket for next year. Salem has worked really hard over these last few years to make sure that we're a place that welcomes everybody, and it's not always been easy. When we passed one of the first fully inclusive non-discrimination ordinances in the state, we had to put it into force almost immediately when Gordon College, which held the contract to manage Old Town Hall at the time, refused to stop intentionally discriminating against their LGBTQ plus students. We decided to immediately terminate that contract, and we heard a lot of outcry from the far right from across the nation for it. We turned that hate into something powerful. We decided that for every call we got attacking this decision, the mayor made a donation to NAGLI, and we raised enough money that they were able to lease a permanent space where they still are to this day. I was proud to be part of the team that helped create the position of LGBTQ plus liaison, both in the police department and at City Hall, and to ensure that Salem every year receives a perfect 100 score on the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index. When I think about the place where I want to raise my children, I want it to be a place where they're safe, respected, and supported, no matter who they are, how they identify, or who they love. And I think every parent feels that way. That's what I want for Salem. That's what I've always worked for, and that's what I will always, always fight for.
Follow up. Salem's Race Equity Task Force made its first recommendations in a report to the city. Do you know whether any of the recommended actions from the report have been taken, and what will your administration do to address inequity and racism?
So I don't believe any of the actions have been taken, but I think that they ought to be taken. I was proud to draft the ordinance that created the Race Equity Commission. It grew out of the work of the Race Equity Task Force, which was convened in 2020. And the intention of the commission was to make permanent a body that would meet and provide guidance not only to the city around our race equity work, but provide guidance to the community as well. So community partners can avail themselves of the commission, of the members, and the experts that are on it. And it's led by our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. When we created the job description for that position, we were really thoughtful about trying to find somebody that reflected a lot of the skill sets that are important in that work. And actually today is the 1-year anniversary of Regina Zaragoza Frey starting in that role. And I think she's done remarkable work for the city. But that work is just getting started. By no means is it finished. And I think that whether it's supporting equity efforts in our community, our small business community, and our public safety departments, our municipal departments, or our public schools, where I think we've really started to take an intentionally anti-racist focus. That work is ongoing, and it may frankly never ever be over, because it's that important that we should always keep it centered in the work that we're doing.
Thank you. Neil.
I think I bring a little bit of historical perspective to this issue because I remember back in the 60s when the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act were passed, a lot of people thought the work was done in terms of equity, particularly racial equity. And I think there has been a long time lull that has fortunately been broken, and it's by people of my kids' generation. I am informed on this issue on a daily basis by the heightened awareness of my kids and people of their generation about how the work is not done in terms of racial equity in this country. And I am a strong believer in it. I am a strong believer that it needs to continue, and I believe the city needs to play a role in doing so, not only in terms of policies, but actions in terms of its hiring practices and in terms of how city officials treat people of color. It's very, very important. We are, of course, a diverse community, and proudly so. But it's something that I'm glad that there is an awakening about, because the work is never done, as Dominic and other people have said. We cannot be satisfied until everyone in this country is truly treated equally, and race becomes a non-factor.
Thank you. Neil, are you in favor of building a new high school or middle high school? And if yes, how would it be funded? Can Salem afford a new high school? That's you.
I'm sorry, was it me?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was watching Dominic take notes over here. So I'm not sure if the city can afford a new high school, because the estimates of the cost run around $200 million. However, having said that, I applaud the work of the school committee and the superintendent in seriously studying this issue. Most of the schools built in the 70s, whether it was Salem High School, which I believe opened around 76 or so, and the school district in which Salisbury is a member, which is Triton, which is also built in the mid-70s, they're reaching the end of their useful lives. It's about 50 years or so for these schools before they literally begin to fall apart. And we can have a discussion about why that is, maybe perhaps later. But the point is that those buildings do not meet the modern educational needs of today's students. The question is whether or not targeted renovation or a wholesale tear down and construction of a new school is necessary and affordable. I do think from a programmatic point of view, it's certainly necessary to do major upgrades. And if the renovation option is completely off the table and not feasible, then I would certainly support a new building. Whether we can afford it is a different question. The state school building assistance program, I think, is grossly underfunded. And I think we should dedicate the legislature should dedicate a much higher percentage of money from the so-called millionaire's tax to that program to help communities pay for new schools.
Thank you. Dominic.
Thanks. So I think the question isn't, can Salem afford to build a new high school? It's, can we afford not to? If you've been in that building, it does a disservice to the teachers, to the staff, to the students, to everybody. And it's really not only past its useful life, it's not safe, it's not healthy. The classrooms are not built in a manner to physically accommodate the type of education that's happening today. Not just the technology needs, but even the kind of work that's happening in the CTE program, in our early college program, the library space, the arts space, the music room is a disaster. There was a lot of thoughtful work that went into the facility master plan, and a lot of people participated in that. And really, it was the groundwork for this long-awaited need to replace Salem High School with a better facility that serves our children well. We're worried about losing families from this district and losing enrollment and losing the ability to retain teachers. And one of the large reasons that happens is because our physical facilities are not serving them well. So I think we have a responsibility to look at this project and look at it optimistically. We have the strongest bond rating in the city's history right now. We have a number of we have an amount of debt coming off the books soon that's going to make it possible for us to look at this in a way that I think we need to take seriously. The MSBA reimbursement is not competitive. It is not great, but it's better than nothing. And if we do nothing, then we're going to just lose more students, more teachers, more staff. And I don't think that's the kind of community that we want to be. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Salem Teachers Union. I'm proud to be a Salem public school parent, and I don't want my children going to a school that is in the condition that Salem High School is in right now.
Another school question. And we start with Dominic.
No, I didn't agree.
We are doing so well. Career and technical education is a major part of the current high school's curriculum, and 600 out of 900 students at the high school experience CTE. How do you see the role of career and technical education at Salem High in the future?
I think that it's an incredible program. If no one's been up there to see it before, you should definitely take a look. The CTE program has grown by leaps and bounds. Really, the only constraint is, again, the physical space that they're trying to operate out of. The opportunities that exist with the offshore wind industry that's coming here, and as I said, all the industries that are around that provide some incredible opportunities as we think about the future of work. I would love to see the CTE program grow. I think it's one of the reasons that our enrollment's actually up this year in Salem Public Schools, is that a lot of families are looking at Salem High School now and saying, why am I going to go to Essex Tech when I'm going to get put on a wait list and not get my kid into the shop they want to be because it's oversubscribed? I could go to Salem High School, get a remarkable CTE program, get a great academic program, have the options to go to the early college program, and really be well prepared. I'm an optimist about Salem Public Schools, and I think that the CTE program at Salem High School is a great example of something that we've done really well in the last few years that gives me hope that Salem Public Schools is a place that I hope every Salem family is willing to send their children, because, you know, my opponent has said that the jury's still out on our superintendent, and I think it adds to the narrative that Salem schools are a detraction from our community. But if you've been inside our schools and you've been part of the school community, I think that you would disagree with that.
Yeah.
Well, let me begin by correcting the mischaracterization of that remark by my opponent. I said the jury is still out on the school superintendent because I was asked the question before I met with the school superintendent, because I didn't know anything about him. I subsequently met with the superintendent, and I'm greatly impressed with the superintendent, but perhaps we'll talk about that at another part of the evening. So I appreciate not having my remarks mischaracterized. In terms of the CTE program, I also agree. And it's a major plus, and I'm glad to see that the state is partnering financially for this, because I think it does take a partnership between the state and local communities to promote these types of programs. Likewise, the early college program is a terrific plus for the school system. And I think because we have a very, very diverse school system, and not every kid is going to go to college, although I wish more kids from the school system were going to college personally, I think that we need a variety of different programs for different needs. And so I think the CTE program is a very good program. I would strongly support it. And I also agree, frankly, with Dominic's point about the selectivity of the local vocational school. I think that's a major problem.
Okay, let's follow up while we're here on schools, and why don't you take 90 seconds and talk about what, you know, as mayor, you both would be on the school committee. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the Salem schools, and how can they be addressed?
Well, I think the greatest strength is the potential for all of our kids to succeed and to do well with a very dedicated group of teachers who works very, very hard every day to see that they can provide the best that they can for our kids. The second strength, as I just mentioned a minute ago, is the superintendent. After years of turnover at the top and instability in terms of the administrative ranks in the school system, this superintendent, I believe, has laid a foundation for stability that I support. I did have that meeting with him several months ago. I met with him for an hour and a half, and I think he has a realistic grasp of what some of the major problems are with the school system, but I also think he knows how to promote the strengths. And so I support his agenda, and I think in the long term, if he's here and he just re-signed for 5 years, that we have an opportunity to move the school system forward. But we also need to meet parental expectations. And when I walk through the door throughout the city, as I've done for the last several months, the parents have mixed reviews of the school system, because in some cases they think it's doing well, and in other cases they feel that their children are being underserved. And so aspirationally, I think the entire system needs to be lifted, not only by the direction that's set by the superintendent, but by the signal that's sent by the mayor and the members of the school committee about how important it is to have a quality public education for our kids. The kids are the future of our community. We need to be more aspirational in terms of the entire school system, support the programs that work, be realistic about the programs that are weak, and to make them better and get behind the superintendent.
Dominic.
Thanks. I mean, I had the benefit of knowing Dr. Zreik before I was a candidate for office. I met him multiple times in my previous capacities as the chief of staff, and I was excited when he came on board to lead our district. I'm an optimist about Salem schools. To your question about the strengths here, for philosophical reasons, for sure, but also for personal ones. As the parent of a third grader at Bates and a seventh grader at Collins, I'm deeply invested in the success of our schools, and I think the path that Salem Public Schools is on is largely the right one. But we need to keep a strong, positive focus to maintain that. We've created remarkable programs. We're not going to talk about CTE again because we've talked about that a lot. Our early college program, which provides the option for students that do want to go into college to really leverage an opportunity to do so with taking on less debt and having some advanced credits. Our public pre-K program, which is phenomenal and growing here in Salem, which really grew not just out of COVID, but came even earlier than that. But we really amped it up after the pandemic to support that program and the opportunities for people that needed to go back to work. And our student mental health initiative. You know, you talk about COVID, the learning loss from COVID is significant, but so are the social and emotional impacts. And Salem has done some remarkable things. The Cartwheel program, if you're not familiar with it, is providing free telemental health options for students. Unfortunately, because it's funded by COVID dollars, it's only available to certain numbers of students at certain schools. And it's a successful program. So that's the kind of thing that I think if it's working and our kids need it, we should be willing to invest in it, make it sustainable, and make it available to more kids. Because that's going to help our students, but it's also going to help the teachers that are trying to manage those classrooms.
Thank you. Another question from the audience. Our nation is suffering from the crises of homelessness and mental illness. What are your personal beliefs regarding these crises, and how do you plan to address these issues in relationship to our city? Dominic.
So I'm a strong proponent of the housing first approach to homelessness, which is the idea that if you provide access to transitional supportive housing and expand the successful programs that we have in Salem, like the Community Impact Unit, the Salem Police Department, that has mental health clinicians and outreach workers, that you can wrap services around people by providing them with stable housing and the services that they need. And also, I would support the continuation of what Salem already has in a high-risk homeless task force, which is basically a task force that meets monthly to address the needs of some of our most challenging unhoused individuals. Long-term, we can't solve homelessness without talking about homes. While the dozen or so chronically homeless individuals that are most visible downtown really characterize the way we talk about this challenge, the bigger challenge are the many, many people who are quietly unhoused or on the brink of losing their housing. Far more seniors and families that are here in our community right now than we might want to admit are just one step away from catastrophe. We have, as of January, 170 unhoused students in the Salem Public Schools, an over 30% increase from this time last year. And the senior housing wait list at the Housing Authority is years long. The need is urgent. There are many root causes for homelessness: substance use disorder, mental health challenges, systemic racism, economic disparity, and job loss. But that, by definition, the one thing that every person struggling with homelessness has in common is a need for a home.
Thank you. Neil.
Well, homelessness is certainly a very serious issue that affects not only Salem, but communities throughout the country. And it's a relatively modern, recent phenomenon in its scale. The causes of it are complex. They're not only economic, but they have to do seriously with mental health issues, people that are struggling with substance abuse. And so it's a multifaceted problem. There's no simple solution to. I think everybody recognizes that. But we have an obligation to the poorest. I don't mean financially poorest, but the people that are in the poorest shape in our society. To do what we can for them with existing programs, and Salem has a variety of different programs which I support, which are helpful to get people back on their feet in some way, shape, or form. And so as the mayor of the city, I will do my utmost to work with the local institutions who do provide those types of services so that we can transition these folks back onto the first steps of a meaningful life. I'm very encouraged with some of the programs that I know about and that I have met with some of the people that are running them in terms of their success rate, which gets unpublicized. A lot of people think that the homeless population in downtown Salem is the same people all the time. It's not. A lot of those people have transitioned back to productive lives. Unfortunately, it's a growing problem, and it's not going to go away if we hide our head in the sand. We need to be proactively involved with all of the people on the nonprofit side who do so much to help these folks.
Thank you. Another audience question. Approximately 11 non-tourist businesses have left Salem in the last year and a half. They've gone to surrounding cities and doubled or tripled their business. How would you open communication with businesses and City Hall to help solve this problem? That's you, Neil.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
So I mentioned earlier in one month, I think it was the very first question, the line of communication between the mayor's office and the local business community, I think is tenuous at best and needs to be dramatically approved. I've spoken to several small business owners who said that no one from the administration has ever spoken to them about the particular issues that they face. And so it starts with communication, and it starts with listening to what the local business people are saying, not just in the downtown, but in areas that are negatively affected, such as the one that I mentioned earlier on North Street, where the businesses are dying on the vine because of poorly planned traffic changes. So there's bound to be a certain amount of turnover in any community in which some businesses don't make it, and it's not necessarily the community itself's fault that happens. But we have a very low vacancy rate in the downtown, and I'm told by people on the business side that there are businesses looking to come here. So we need to provide the types of assistance that those businesses need, whether they're financial or just service-wise or otherwise. But they need to be listened to, and they need to have someone from the mayor's office who cares about strengthening the local business community year-round, not just during the tourist season, because some of those businesses, as I mentioned earlier, suffer during Halloween, and they barely make it through the rest of the year because of the negative impact of the Halloween season.
Thank you. Dominic.
Thanks. During COVID, we had no net loss of businesses in Salem, which is something remarkable and something that I think not a lot of other communities can attest to, because we were really very thoughtful about communicating and supporting our businesses, and that was largely out of the outgrowth that happened through the Economic Recovery Task Force, through partnerships with the Salem Chamber of Commerce, who meets monthly with the mayor, and I would continue that work and want to bring in more of the business partners in our community. I think that, as we want to look at ways to grow the non-tourism facing businesses downtown, and by the way, the tourism economy downtown supports all the restaurants that we get to enjoy year round. The people that work in the tourist industry also get their haircut and do their shopping in downtown and eat the food in downtown as well. So it's a complex ecosystem, and it's not really entirely easy to say this is a tourist business and this is not a tourist business. We have the Daily Table and Annie's Asian Market and Silly Bunny. We have places that have been here for a long time, like Pomplamoose, that serve our downtown residents and also the residents that want to come downtown. And I think especially as we start to grow the ability for people to live downtown and welcome that kind of multifamily housing in our downtown that we're starting to see close to transit, it also creates the customer base for those kinds of businesses that we want to attract here. So that those business owners, the free market, can look at those spaces, look at that market, look at that customer base and say, there's an opportunity there for me to find some people who are walkable to my business, and that's where I want to be. And that's how you support that kind of economy growing in an organic and natural way as well.
Thank you. The audience question, when we start with Dominic. 10 to 20 years ago, Salem's Recreation Department offered significantly more recreation programs for seniors, adults, and children. Neighboring cities offer 10 times our programs, and they are successful. Why has Salem recently stopped many good programs, and what will you do to bring them back?
I think that the programs that are offered through the Community Life Center, both the Council on Aging and the Recreation Department, are actually really robust. The opportunities, especially at like the Forest River Park, the new outdoor recreation center that we've completed there, provide some great opportunities for outdoor learning for kids and programming. I think that a lot of the times it's difficult for people to understand what programs might even be available to them. So I think it's less a matter of creating more programs and more a matter of trying to connect people to the options that are available to them. And I think that comes down a lot to communication, reaching out to people where they are. Right now, if you want to register for a program at the Council on Aging, you have to do so by calling a number, showing up. You should be able to do it online. It should be easy with one click. Those are just some of the ways I think you can connect people with the options that are there. And then partner with our community organizations and try to leverage those partnerships so they're providing programs where they have expertise. The Boys and Girls Club, the Salem YMCA, our partners through the Salem Public Schools and Salem State University They have some remarkably talented people, both faculty and students, and they would have the opportunity to come in and provide programs and partnerships. Salem for All Ages, which I co-chair, is an initiative that's trying to bridge connections to bring older adults into different kinds of programs, both at the CLC and throughout the community. And I think that there's some great opportunities there, and I would love to build on those as the mayor.
Right. Neil.
Many people who grew up in Salem, as I did several years ago, were very fortunate to have a city that supported and promoted youth recreational programs for free. Now, most of the programs that you have to participate in, you have to pay for. So I think that's a step in the wrong direction. It's exemplified in my mind by what's happened at Forest River. Although the physical improvements are terrific and I applaud them, you now have to pay to swim at the pool at Forest River, even though your tax dollars have paid to physically construct the pool. How is that encouraging people to get involved in recreational programs when you have to pay for a service that your tax dollars are already paying for? So I think that eliminating fees and taking these things in-house and running these programs in such a way so that you're not charging kids, particularly lower income kids, money to partake in these programs is something that we need to pivot toward. We might not have as many programs as we had several years ago because, frankly, there are not as many kids as there were several years ago. The park system, which I grew up in, was the most robust recreational opportunity that everybody had, but there are simply not as many kids going to the parks today as there used to be. But in terms of recreational programs, the city has an obligation to its youth to provide these programs for free, as far as I'm concerned, and to offer as many of them as they possibly can.
Thank you. All right, we start with Neil for this question. This is another audience question. What do you see as Salem's most urgent transportation needs? And can you speak on the future of the South Salem commuter rail station?
Well, I don't know what the future would be, except that I hope that it's built sooner rather than later. I don't know of anybody who doesn't support the South Salem commuter rail station. Unfortunately, as a component of the T, the prospect of that happening in any timely and efficient and cost-effective manner anytime in the near future is questionable at best. However, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop advocating for it. And I completely support the new train station or the train stop at South Salem for a variety of different reasons, which I think are self-apparent. Salem's transportation issues in large measure are a result of our success. People don't come to communities that aren't successful. Say there are 17,000 people a day that commute to Salem by car because they live far enough away where they're not going to ride a bike to work, particularly in the wintertime. They're going to drive here. And we have major employers. We have the college, we have the hospital, we have the court system. We have a lot of thriving businesses in the downtown. And so it's a question of volume and management of that volume that we need to do a much better job on. And so we have our challenges, but we have our challenges because we are successful. And the solutions, or at least the attempts at the solutions, to try to fix some of the problems that don't really exist, such as speeding on North Street, are not solving or not really making a dent in the problems that we really have, which is the overall volume and the street capacity that they're not able to handle at all.
Thank you. Dominic.
So I'm also a supporter of the South Salem commuter rail platform. I don't know anybody who's not. I'm really proud of the work we've done in partnership with Salem State University, Salem Hospital, and the Salem Partnership over the last decade to advance that from a really conceptual idea to now where we're in the phase of actually starting to work towards design. Received funding from Congressman Moulton's office through a federal earmark to make it another step towards reality. And I think that partnership is really demonstrating to the MBTA that this is a station that, first of all, they don't have to fully fund, but also is something that the community desperately wants as a way to remove traffic from Route 107, remove traffic from Jefferson Avenue, and support two of our largest employers. We've finished an economic impact study for that, and there's more work that has to be done on that. And I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one to keep it going forward because it is a critical part of how we think about the future of transportation. Public transit is essential, and that includes advancing the efforts with the MBTA to electrify the rail and to provide better reliability. I think that the fact that we have an advocate for Salem in the corner office and the Lieutenant Governor, I'm proud to have the Lieutenant Governor's endorsement and the endorsement of Governor Maura Healey, ready to get to work advocating with them so they understand the priority need of this project. In addition to that, I think there's a world of opportunity that we haven't fully explored in water transportation options. The Salem Ferry is great. We've tried water taxi services in the past, and I think there's a lot of things we can pilot in that space that'll provide connections to not just within Salem, but even around the region across the North Shore. So I'm excited about the opportunities that are ahead for thinking about transportation in a different way, and I'm ready to get started on that work.
Thank you. Dominic, in the last decade or so, Salem has become the poster child of positive development of an older urban city and is the envy of many other communities on the North Shore and the Commonwealth. Tourism and tourism dollars play an important role in the success story. With our 400th anniversary in mind, what can Salem do to improve the downtown experience for residents and tourists alike?
So I think Salem invests a lot in supporting ourselves as an economy that's not just for visitors, but also for people that live here and want to be in a place that's vibrant year-round, that's exciting year-round, that has great places to eat, to shop, museums to see. And I think that really starts with our small business community and supporting them and their growth. As we approach the quadricentennial, Salem 400, as we say, Salem 400 plus, because it recognizes that Salem there are people living here more than 400 years ago, and we want to recognize the history of all the peoples that were in this land. I was proud to be part of the initiative over the last 10 years that started the formation of Salem 400 plus. Hiring the Signature Parks coordinator, hiring the Salem 400 coordinator to make sure that pressing work continued. We hit a little road bump with COVID, but they're now moving back forward with that. And I think that we need to make sure that's a priority. As we start to see more visitors downtown, like I said, how we export the costs for those visitors onto the visitors themselves is really important conversation to have. We have, just as a quick example, a pay-by app system on our parking meters. And if you're a visitor coming to Salem in October on a Saturday parking on Washington Street, you're paying the same per hour as a Salem resident parking on Washington Street on a Saturday in March. That shouldn't be the case. If you're parking in a premium spot in October and you're a visitor to our community, we had the ability with that app to make sure that you're paying a little bit more. And that's how we can start to move some of those costs off of the residents and onto the visitors and invest more in our downtown to make sure that it's clean, welcoming, and well-maintained.
Thank you. Neil.
I think the influx of newer residents to the city over the last 10 or 15 years shows great promise in terms of our ability of the downtown to rebound from what has been an extended, I won't use the word slump, but I would extended period of not having reached its potential. I don't think I need to recount all of the pain that the city went through with the bricking in of the Essex Street Mall and the decline of the retail businesses downtown. It's been exacerbated by not only by the mall, but by online shopping and things of that nature. But I think the arrival of new people who live in and around or a relatively close proximity to the downtown is a plus. And is speaking from someone from an older generation who doesn't go downtown as often as I did when I was younger. I think it's an opportunity for us to take a lesson for those people who have moved here and to develop programs and make some physical changes if necessary to what's going on in downtown to make it more attractive, to reconnect the Peabody Essex Museum, some of the historic sites with people who live here so that they have a better downtown experience. I know a lot of people who avoid going downtown for a variety of different reasons because they haven't psychologically gotten past the part of what downtown used to be. It's not going to be what it was in the 1960s. It's going to be something new and exciting and vibrant. And I think, well, we need to embrace that.
Thank you. Okay, this is a city budget question, and we start with Neil. What is the financial state of the city? If elected, what specific idea or program will you consider increasing spending for? And what specific idea or program would you consider eliminating?
I think the city is in very good financial shape, and I commend the Driscoll administration for making that happen. I will say in my own defense that when I arrived in Salisbury 20 years ago, Salisbury was in terrible fiscal condition. Town hall was only open 3 days a week. The library was closed, et cetera. And over the succeeding number of years, I was able to restore Salisbury to excellent financial condition. So fortunately, I don't have that work to do in Salem if I'm fortunate enough to be elected. I would invest more in the schools, quite frankly. I talked to the superintendent, as I mentioned earlier, and he mentioned to me at the time, which was in December, that he had serious concerns about whether he was going to be able to support the budget The city was going to be able to support the budget to the extent necessary in the coming fiscal year. So I think greater investment in the schools is necessary. And I do think we should take a look at the phenomenon that has become the traffic and parking department. We've taken the authority away from the police department for traffic improvement changes and invested it in a department of 4 full-time individuals at a cost of salary and benefits close to $500,000, and an unelected traffic and parking commission that has made very poor decisions in terms of traffic and public safety, parking safety in this community. So if there was one division that I would consider reducing or eliminating, it would be the traffic and parking division.
Dominic.
Thanks. Yeah, I am incredibly proud of the record of professional financial management that we've had over the last administration at Salem, and I hope everybody in the community is as well. And I'll bring that same experience and commitment and that work that I was involved in to my administration. 17 years of balanced budgets filed timely and transparently, stamps of approval from the Government Finance Officers Association every year, record rainy day funds and a record bond rating, like I said, our best in our city's history. And not once did we ever need a Prop 2.5 override here in Salem. It's important to recognize that kind of positive financial track record is not a given. It happens because of intentional hard work. In 2006, when then newly elected Mayor Kim Driscoll came into office, she inherited a fiscal mess left over from the bad practices of a past administration. And it took a lot of hard work by a lot of people to dig us out of that hole. That's a recipe for financial success that we have here in Salem. And I was proud to be part of those efforts, building those budgets and building those finance policies. And thinking about where we want to make investments in our community, I agree. I think the schools are a priority if we want to make sure they're first class and serving all of our students well. And like I mentioned, I think that we also need to start doing more around affordability, and not just in terms of housing and not just in terms of first-time homebuyer programs, but the creation of an actual human services agency or office in the city that can help people connect with the resources that are out there right now. There are far fewer people signed up for example, the low-income heating assistance program, which is federally funded, that actually qualify for it. People are going in homes without heat or throughout the winter that would be able to receive assistance if they had the ability to access those funds and they knew that they were there. And I think as a city, we have a responsibility to do more to help them connect to those kinds of services.
Thank you. Okay. In recent months, Massachusetts has seen an increase in the number of immigrants and refugees arriving through our southern borders. What role, if any, does the city have in welcoming and caring for these new arrivals? Dominic.
Thanks. So I think I may be mistaken. I'm not 100% certain, but I think the number of border crossings may actually be down, but don't quote me on it. It may not be. Irregardless, Salem's a welcoming city, and as a welcoming city, that means that no matter what your immigration status is, we're going to pick up your trash. You're going to be able to walk into your children's schools. You have the right to the same services that every other person living in the city has access to. When we heard the news that DHCD was looking to put a emergency family shelter site here in Salem, there was a lot of outcry and concern that it would mean that there were people coming here who weren't from Salem. And a lot of that outcry wasn't for people living in Salem. We were a community where people stepped up and recognized, whether it was our Sanctuary for Peace ordinance or the work we've done, through our Race Equity Commission, that we were a city that was going to continue to be welcoming and to value everybody that comes here, no matter how they came here. The city's responsibility is to provide services to our residents, and that's what I believe that we should continue doing, is providing first-class services. As a city, when DHCD opened that site, we made a decision as an administration that we were going to communicate loudly that those families were welcome here. And as it turned out, most of those families were not migrant families after all. There are kids right in our school district right now who are living in shelters and motels and other places in Massachusetts. We as a community, I think, have done remarkable things to be a place that is open and welcoming to all. We've advanced issues around language access, bilingual translation, and interpretive services at our schools that we can model in our city council work and our city boards. But I think that work is pressing, and that's what makes us a welcoming city.
Neil.
The very foundation of this country is immigration. And we are an immigrant city. I don't need to recount all the variety of different immigrants who have come here over the years. And it's no different today, in my mind. Why are people leaving countries from all over the world to come to cities like Salem? It's the promise of America. It hasn't changed over the years. It's not perhaps the same for some people as it may have been, 60, 70, 80 years ago. But the fact of the matter is people are escaping economic and political oppression all over the world. And I strongly, strongly welcome people to come to this country and particularly to our city. I've had several discussions with people that I do not agree with politically, who believe that we should be rounding up people and deporting them and sending them back to horrible conditions in their own countries. That's not what I stand for, and that's not what the city of Salem has ever stood for. And so whether those people are migrants, whether they're legal, illegal, no matter what country they come from, we should welcome them, we should help them. We should, of course, assist them in their ability at all levels of government to attain legal immigrant status if that's what they desire. But as far as I'm concerned, we should not be turning people away from other countries, because that is inconsistent with our history. It's inconsistent with our moral values, and personally, I find it repulsive.
Thank you. Okay, our question session is done. We're going to go to closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes for a closing statement, and we start with Neil.
As soon as I find it. There we go. Okay. This campaign is about Salem voters making an important choice that will affect the future of our city for years to come. In my mind, the choice is clear. It's a choice between a person with over 25 years of direct, hands-on municipal management experience and a person who's never held elective office. Between a person who has spent years personally listening to the concerns of residents and who is used to being held accountable to the people who have elected him, and a person who has only been accountable and had to take direction from one person, the former mayor. The mayor who, as everyone knows, made all the bottom line decisions while this other person was working as a staff person at City Hall. From my conversations with folks I have met at their front doors and at coffee parties, I have become affirmed in my belief that this campaign is about listening, not lecturing. It's about people, not programs. It's about electing a candidate who is running on his own record and not someone else's. If I'm elected, I won't be looking over my shoulder. I will be looking straight ahead, and I will be accountable to only one constituency, the people of Salem. Our city has a proud history of changing and adapting to meet the times. I'm running because I want to unite Salem and continue to move it forward. I come prepared to lead, to listen, to put my experience to work for everyone who has chosen to call Salem home. I believe there is no problem that Salem cannot take on if we commit to working together. I'm making that commitment because I love this city and I want to see it succeed. I hope you will all join me in this effort, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 16th.
My thanks again to the debate organizers, the moderator, to everyone who submitted questions, who watched or attended. Salem is at a pivotal moment, a moment where we must choose. Do we continue to move forward as a city, or do we push pause and rewind? To me, that's not a choice. Salem didn't become the place it is today, the place I love, the place where I chose to raise my family by settling for middling or mediocrity. We're a city that punches far above our weight class, a place that other places want to be like. We're not a sleepy town or a bedroom suburb. We're not a city that looks at the opportunities that are ahead of us and says, pass. And the idea that you have to be a politician to manage this city is frankly exactly what's wrong with politics these days. I've not run for office here in the past. I'm not an itinerant politician just looking for the next gig. I'm a leader who's been here doing the work, and as a public school parent, someone deeply and personally invested in the success of our schools and our community. Salem deserves a mayor who's prepared to lead with competence and compassion on the challenges facing our community today and into the future. Someone who shares a vision of what our city can be and the values that have made us a beacon of progress and prosperity. Someone who's been there for Salem, shoulder to shoulder alongside so many of you for the important discussions and fights over these years. Someone ready to get to work for our city on day one because they've been doing that work for our city every day for the last decade. I'm running for mayor to build on the foundation that we've created here together, to fix what isn't working, but to keep us moving forward toward a Salem that works for everyone. I'm incredibly proud of the grassroots campaign that we've run so far, and I invite you to join our campaign at pangaloforsalem.com, and I ask for your vote on May 16th. Thank you very much.
All right, that concludes our debate. I want to say thank you to SATV for filming it. I want to say thank you to the Hawthorne for this wonderful location. Thank you all for the great questions. And let's do one more round of applause for the candidates before we go.